Welcome to this video, round 4. Yeah, always need to look that up. Round 4 coverage of the Gashimov Memorial from Azerbaijan. Shamkir is the city where they play. And yeah, round 4. We got, in fact, 3 interesting games today. But okay, I decided to just pick one for Game of the Day. And Game of the Day will be Caruana playing white against the world champion. Magnus Carlsen playing black. Briefly about the 2 other games. We had 2 draws in those games. Kayakin played white against Mamedyarov, and there was, interestingly enough, repetition of the Caruana advance. So Mamedyarov, who had lost the day before against Nakamura, played the same line again. Again the Caruana, again with the quick c5. Kayakin tried, as he mentioned in the post-mortem press conference, tried an older idea that he had prepared, but Mamedyarov simply found all the right responses necessary to even the game. So they had a relatively quick draw in terms of moves, but it was still quite interesting. I didn't intend that actually, but I found the end quite amusing. Here we look at this somewhat crazy looking position. White attacking the rook on d6. On the other hand, white's king is also wide open. Black's king is on d8. It looks somewhat random, this position. There is only one way to play as black to get, or so let's say, to not land into serious trouble, and this is to give away the rook. Interestingly enough, f takes g4 is by far the strongest move, and it leads to a draw. Everything else leads to big trouble. And it seems that white does not have anything better than taking the rook, which after g3 leads to an immediate mate threat. And white can really not prevent that unless he takes on g3. This is the only move. Other moves lead to yeah, quick defeat. So it takes.
Check.
And now we had this perpetual
check
with the queen checking. And therefore a draw was agreed here rather early, but sometimes it happens with those sharp lines. The other game was Rajabov playing white against Nakamura, and here Nakamura played the Slav again. He trusts his defenses there, it seems, despite his loss in round 2 against Carlsen. And it seemed that Rajabov had a slightly more comfortable position. Why not briefly look at it, just to get the general picture. This kind of position we had. Yeah, we see that it is equal material, 4 pawns, 4 pawns. But white has somewhat the more comfortable position. There is pressure here, pressure on d5, and he managed to activate nicely. But Nakamura played an excellent defense, and at the end it was a draw after a very long fight in the end game. So I don't want to get into detail here, but a very good level game really, with a good defense and Rajabov putting some pressure. He seems to be in pretty decent shape again in this tournament, Rajabov, after having lost really a ton of rating points in the last year. Okay, so let's go to the main part of this video, Caruana Carlsen, and yes, it is the the dreaded Berlin defense to the Rui. In a way, yeah, let's say the bane of every 1e4 player nowadays. How to get anything against the Berlin. Caruana has played many lines against this. Well, there are mostly 2 choices, of course. There is the endgame with castles. This is what he played in the game. And there is d3 as well. He has tried both, but here he went for castles and allowed the endgame. Yeah, and of course now knight takes e4 and d4 was played. And we come to this
check
now famous endgame, the so-called Berlin Wall endgame, that really was put to the limelight by Kramnik in his World Championship match in the year 2000, where Kasparov really banged his head against this wall and never really got anywhere. I mean, he got some good positions, but he couldn't win a game, which basically was the decider in the match, as Kramnik back then won 2 games with white and simply didn't lose anything with with black, which was unheard of in a match against Kasparov. Okay, here for quite a number of years the main move has been knight to c3. After that, black has a big choice: bishop d7, there is bishop e7, king e8, h6, and so on. But in recent times, the move h3 has gained some popularity. One reason for this is that it is directed against a particular setup that black sometimes chooses. This is the setup with bishop to d7. After knight c3, bishop d7 is one move that is considerably popular. Black intends to play quick king c8, bishop e7, rook d8, something like that. Black's only problem in this position, but it is a serious problem, is of course that he lost castling rights, and this is not bad for the king really, but bad for the rooks. It's very tough to connect rooks here. It's almost, yeah, in the Berlin, if black manages to connect the rooks or get both rooks into play, sometimes the rooks get into play from the initial squares. It's not like they need to get to e8 or d8 necessarily. Sometimes there are things happening like pawn to h4 and rook to h5, for example. Okay, well, bishop d7 is one way to prepare the rook connection later. And this h3 move is pointed against that, because after this, white has an interesting additional option. He can try to gain space now immediately on the king side. g4, knight to e7, knight g5. This is the idea of the early h3 move. After bishop e8, for example, white can even play a quick f4, which is very sharp, and at least a way to to look for something as white. I mean, it's really very, very difficult to get anything against this opening. So I think white players are glad that there is this additional option, at least against one particular setup. However, after h3, black has many other ways he can play. There is king e8, there is h5. Yeah, Carlsen played h6.
Check.
Rook d1, check. King here. Yeah, note that if black goes bishop d7 now, it runs into a more than serious problem. White wins instantly here. So you must go to e8. It's not the end of the world, but it's somewhat, again, a bit of a limitation of black's options. Yeah, this h6 move, by the way, is designed to prepare a bishop development to e6. Black wants to avoid the bishop getting attacked immediately with knight g5. So h6 is the preparation for that. In an earlier round, we had, was it Caruana, Kayakin playing black? I'm not 100% sure. I think it was. Kayakin is black, normally plays with h5, and judging from his games, I think this is also a very interesting setup. I don't know the Berlin in much detail, I must admit. It's only what I gathered from time to time looking at top level games. I have played this line sometimes in the past, but I stopped playing the Berlin in favor of the main line, simply with a6 and so on, like the Chigorin, the Breyer, simply because I wanted to have somewhat, yeah, more complicated battle in a way. I didn't want to trade down so quickly as black. So my experience is really limited. Okay, king e8, knight c3, and bishop d7 here. Well, as mentioned, bishop e6 was the initial idea, but this is not a bad move. One problem of this, by the way, could be that g4, knight e7, knight d4 could be a bit annoying here. Yeah, I guess that's the reason for bishop d7. Bishop d7, I mean, the main idea of this is anyway to get in quickly rook d8 and probably bishop move again to trade one pair of rooks, which is also helpful to black. Black has somewhat less space, so he does not mind to trade some pieces, especially the rooks, as this is the main problem of his position. The rooks are in the corners, not doing much. Okay, bishop f4 developing. The bishop does not really have any better square. And one point about the bishop being on f4 is always this idea to play e5 to e6 at the right moment and open up the position. It looks a bit, or it sounds a bit strange that white would actually would like to open the position as black has got the bishop pair. But the problem that black has is not, or let's say, the opportunities that white has here in this position are mostly connected with the concrete measures using the somewhat or slightly disturbed coordination in black's camp. So those direct approaches are very interesting. Of course, it really must net something concrete, those kind of tactical direct ideas, but it's not uncommon, this setup. Rook d8 and now knight e4 was played. At least according to my database, this is a novelty. Looks perfectly normal, this move, but it seems to be new. In an earlier game, Caruana Ponomarev, Caruana had played actually e6. So bishop e6, bishop c7. This was played, and after the capture here and the bishop e7, the game later was drawn. Yeah, the idea here is, as mentioned, it is very concrete, and look at this. Yeah, using the just by playing with moves that actually gain time, attacking the bishop that probably does not want to be captured. Bishop back, and now rook e1 was played, so threatening here. Well, Ponomarev at the end equalized. This was a draw after about 50 moves. This seems to be the intended improvement, knight e4. And if you look at the clock times, this was played rather quickly. Yeah, and now what is black's setup here? He played bishop e7, Carlsen did, after about 15 minutes. And this intends to trade the knights with knight to h4. In general, from what I remember when I studied the Berlin a bit, and this is not about concrete lines but about structures, it was usually quite beneficial for black to get the knight traded. Not because, or let's phrase it differently, the knight on f5 can be a bit of a tricky piece, as it often gets kicked by g4, and it's normally better to have it exchanged than to sort of drop it back, reroute it, and so on. So after this, well, Caruana played g4, and we had the straight now. After that, I don't know, it feels like black should be perfectly okay here with this trade being accomplished. King g2. This is quite a logical continuation. It protects the h3 pawn. It's one thing, and it prepares a further advance of the king in the endgame. So quite a normal looking move. Bishop to e6. Okay, black wants to trade a pair of rooks. Seems fairly logical. f3. Yeah, lending some support to the knight. This was also an idea. And now b6 was played, covering the c5 square. Get b3. Yeah, it's difficult for white to not play this at some point. And one idea is to have this block here, to answer c5 with c4. Yeah, and now we get this position. This is in fact interesting and worth explaining. Was a bit too quick here. Bishop g3. Should black take now on g3 or not? In fact, he didn't take. He retreated to e7. And this is very instructive. Black shouldn't absolutely not trade. It's there is a general reason, of course. You want to keep your bishop pair, but there is also another very concrete reason. If you just look at this this structure, the king on g3 is very well placed. It helps really with the white advance on the king side. f4, f5, king f4 even. These moves will come very quick here, and black is in huge trouble. I mean, I have just for verification issues, I have Stockfish here in the background. It's not the super strongest engine, but it gives only 0.6 for white here, which seems, I don't know, I think white is much better. So well, black shouldn't really trade. He really shouldn't. So we retreated to e7. Now white took on d7. Yeah, Carlsen recaptured with the bishop. If you take with the king, it can easily happen that after f4 you run into the risk of getting squashed by the pawns. You're not sure you want to play g6 here, so he took on d7 with the bishop to be better prepared for the f4 advance. If white now plays f4, there is this move h5. Yeah, and after f5 and capturing, you have bishop to c6, and with that you could really activate your bishop nicely. So I think this was a good decision to take with the bishop. Yeah, knight c3 now, and this is a really strong move. The knight on e4, it looked nice, but it didn't do so much. It wasn't attacking anything. And the knight on d5, on the other hand, is doing something. It looks at e7, it looks at c7, and it puts some pressure on this structure, this pawn structure here. So I think this is a good regrouping. Yeah, note that black in this position does not want to play c7, c6 to prevent knight d5, as this really weakens the structure in the center and on the queen side, especially the d6 square. White will probably just return and at some point put the knight on d6. I mean, really at some point, not at any point, like when black can take it and get to an opposite colored bishop's endgame. Yeah, it needs to be prepared decently. He played a king to d8, which seems fine. And now knight d5. Maybe he had the idea after rook d1 to play king c8, something like that. Knight d5, bishop d8. And then sort of go for h5 or rook e8 at the right moment using the rook. I mean, this whole position, it feels a bit uncomfortable for black, just a bit. I mean, from what I've seen in many games in the Berlin Wall, very often black has no problems whatsoever. It's just like, no pressure even on black. And here there is a bit of pressure. I mean, it does not feel very comfortable. Rook d1 was not played. Caruana played knight d5 first. And this at least, of course, prevents king to c8. So black needs to do something else. He played rook e8 first to prepare that. And now rook d1 was played. Yeah, and in this position, look at the clock times. Carlsen had 37 minutes left. Well, we know that these times here on ICC are just very a bit vague. Yeah, they're not completely precise. But I can tell you, and this, I watched this live. Here, he only spent a couple of seconds on the move king to c8. And if you want, look at this position and try to figure out what Caruana did do now. You can stop the video if you like to give you to give yourself a bit more time. White has a very strong move now, and I'm pretty confident that you are able to find it. Alright, so I hope you found the move. Caruana took on the c7. He took like 2 minutes on that, simply because probably he needed to check if this is a dream or something, because well, Carlsen had just blundered this pawn. There's really no other explanation for that, why he would give up this pawn. Yeah, after knight takes c7, I mean, white is just winning now. So what was king c8? Just a blunder? Probably it was. I mean, one thing is, it's pretty clear that, I mean, black needs to do something concrete now, because this is a huge threat, and king c8 is just completely ignoring the threat. So what should black do? He probably must play c6 here, which is not ideal. That much is clear. I mean, it's not a move that you absolutely love to play. White now has two options, basically. Yeah, I mean, okay, one option is clearly the better one, but even knight e7, just showing it, leads to a very nice position for white, because after rook takes f4, white is just much better coordinated here. The king can easily help, and you have a pawn based on the king side, 4 against 3, while the other majority is not doing so much. This is quite nice for white, but I think even stronger would be just to retreat to e3 and then push the pawns. There's also, at the right moment, maybe knight f5. Black will probably prevent that, but this is just not looking very nice. I mean, black is suffering a bit here. He still should have decent chances to hold, but white has something here. And what I cannot really tell how this happened. Yeah? It's very tricky to figure out. I mean, maybe some moves here in this area can be improved upon. This is quite possible. So I'm not 100% sure where Carlsen went wrong, because he was in slight discomfort anyway, and well, in this position where it already was a bit tricky, he blundered with king c8. Yeah, and I think it was a blunder. This was played very quickly. Yeah, well, knight c7 was played, and now just to show it briefly, well, black cannot ever take. Check. This is just a disaster. White gets on the 7th and wins the house like this. Check. Yeah, this is even a mate. Checkmate. So black needs to go somewhere else. I don't know. Yeah, here probably. Check. Yeah, and black will lose everything here. Yeah, cannot take. So you need to move the rook, no doubt about that. And well, Caruana just dropped back to d5. Knight b5 also was a good looking move, but you can really easily make life hard for yourself. Just check this. It looks very good at first sight, check. But if you look at it more closely, you see that now black is quick enough to get the king to d5, and I'm not 100% sure that this is a totally easy win. Probably white should win here as well, but yeah, this is an active piece on d5, and it's not so clear how exactly do you get your passer on the king side. What he played is just stronger. Dropped back to d5, and now rook e8. It's just like he just snatched this pawn and then retreated. And this means that the knight on d5 is pretty much a monster. It can never be kicked away with the c-pawn anymore, because this had been taken. And white can easily improve his position behind the knight. The knight ties down black's whole position, and white is improving. This, by the way, was a very nice maneuver, I think. The bishop on g3 had its function in pressurizing the queen side, especially c7. Yeah, and well, mission accomplished. c7 has fallen due to this tactic, so the bishop is not doing much anymore. So he reroutes it to c3, where there is something on g7 to look at. And it still has a very nice role on c3 to cover the important e5 spearhead pawn. Just very nice maneuver. Yeah, now very slowly Caruana improved his position. Yeah, this b5 move looks a bit like weakening yourself as black, but you want some activity for the bishop, so it's very understandable what Carlsen did. Also note the clock times. He played almost instantly now, which, if you are really in a bad shape, can be a good recipe. Yeah, just trying to put the other side under some pressure on the clock, that he needs to move all the time, that he has not any time to think while you spend time. The other interesting strategy, by the way, if you're really in bad shape, is to let your clock run down to almost nothing and get yourself into big time trouble. This is a fairly wacky idea, but it sometimes is a good idea, because it irritates the hell out of the other side sometimes, that you are basically deliberately going into time trouble. It can be an idea. If you are so much worse, then it can be the sort of the last effort that you can try. Okay, let's see what happens. Rook d2, strong move again, covering the a pawn. It was much worse to play a move like that. Bishop comes back to d7 and maybe gets to the b3 pawn. Maybe. Or a5 is also looking very good for white. The rook is just not well placed. Yeah, but rook d2 is just a good move. Covering from the side, keeping the active position on the d file. And well, what white must do is he needs to hold the fort on the queen side, make sure that there is no breakthrough or anything happening, and then slowly push the king side and central majority home. And basically this is what happened.
Check.
Now white has a very nice knight position on d6. He got the knight there, and the pawn is pushed, and all the way to f6. Note that the capture here after bishop h4 is not really necessary. I mean, you have all the time in the world, and you shouldn't really try to calculate all this here. It's just not necessary to snatch so quickly. f6 is just a strong move. It prevents any bishop ideas by blocking it. And the f7 pawn is still very weak, so you can take it at a later stage. Bishop to b6. And here this is a very good, a very interesting spot again. Just a very good practical thing. Move 40, yeah? This is move 40, the last move to make before the time control is happening. Caruana had about 1.5 minutes left, and the question is, do you take on f7 or not taking on f7? So if you look at this and you only have little time, you will see that c4 is the reply, and well, alarm bells go off. There is a mate threat on g1, so something like that.
Checkmate.
Not so good. So you will probably see that, okay, I need to do something against the mate. What can I do against the mate? I'm not quite sure what to do against it. So you have 1 minute, 30 seconds. You shouldn't take the pawn. It's just like that. It's not a good practical thing to do. He just played knight c4 back. This kills this bishop. This bishop is now looking at this own pawn on c5, and white has all the time in the world. Now after move 40 he gets the additional, I think it's an hour here in this tournament. So all the time to figure out things. Now rook e8, knight d6 back. And now, well, black does not really want to play a passive move like rook f8. It's just not doing any good. Besides, white can take here. This is an additional problem. Those pawns will win the day. Yeah, Carlsen was playing rook g8, and now this is basically the same position that we had before, just with, yeah, 2 moves added. And now Caruana had the time to figure out that you can take. He just took his time. Why not? He took there. c4 was played, as mentioned, and now h4. This is the key move that needed to be calculated. White now has this additional idea, getting the knight back and then pushing the pawns. And it turns out that he had assessed this correctly. Black has no serious counter chances. If black gives the check, you go to h3, and there is simply nothing bad happening to the king. But this is not so easy to figure out with 1 minute on the clock, so he didn't go for that, but he took the 20-25 minutes to make sure that there is nothing happening. And in fact there is nothing happening here. Carlsen tried something else. He went for this rook g4 move, e6 and bishop e3. Yeah, he could have taken here, but
check.
After a couple of checks, the fun is all over for black, and well, this is coming. Nothing to do really. This, and then knight e5, f7. The pawns just promote. Yeah, bishop e3 was played.
Check.
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 And now bishop g3, blocking the check on g2. And now the pawns are ready to roll.
Check.
Well, one last hope here on c3 gone. And if black plays bishop e6, there is rook c6. This was played, rook d3, rook e4, rook d2, and after rook e6 there was knight g5. Yeah, and here the world champion resigned. He is human after all. Isn't this a good thing, really? It's not like I'm glad that he's losing games, but it's just very reassuring that even Carlsen, with his sometimes really machine-like qualities, yeah, you just think sometimes he's not doing any mistakes. What's going on here? He can really play a big blunder from time to time, and here it happened. This knight takes c7 is quite remarkable that he didn't see that. I didn't see the post-game press conference. It seemed that what I gathered from reports is that he said he didn't really felt like this was his day from the very beginning. Sometimes this happens really. You have those kind of off days in chess or in other areas where you need some sort of where you need a high level of concentration. Sometimes you just have those days where nothing is really happening to you. It's also a matter of physical shape. I mean, Carlsen usually is known for being in top shape. He's a very good athlete and everything, but it sometimes happens you just eat something that you don't really cannot digest properly or whatever. Something that is not going right. And then you have those kind of off days. It just happens. It's certainly a good thing for the tournament here, as now Caruana has scored this important win. Carlsen only on +1 now, so it's a wide open thing now, this tournament. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the coverage for this game. If I'm not mistaken, there is a round tomorrow. They play up to round 5, and then only after that they have a rest day. So I'll be back tomorrow with yet another round. Thanks for watching.